for joining us today. Before we get started, I would like to mention that we do have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them there. You can do that throughout the webinar, and we'll either be answering those live or at the end. So yeah, if you come up with something, just feel free to pop it in there during the webinar. And we'll get started. So I would like to introduce Michael Hyatt. He is a solutions engineer here at Ascend. Michael is adept in customer engagement and product delivery. His professional approach combines technical acumen with excellent interpersonal skills, making him a valuable asset in driving technological innovation and digital transformation. Michael's proficiency extends to areas like big data, cloud computing, APIs, and analytics, underlying his role in supporting business growth and technical leadership. We're super excited to have you here, Michael, for this presentation.
Thank you, Jessa, and really thank you for the warm introduction. So let's get started. I'm going to set the scene in a couple of slides about what we're going to talk about today and what we're going to achieve before we jump into the demo, because I want you to have all the context. So modern data stack gets a lot of flack on the web from the users these days, having to deal with various complexities, especially when trying to deploy their DBT models into production. Things like having to involve Kubernetes, having to involve Docker, right? And I noticed that Airflow orchestration seems to be mentioned quite a lot as a source of quite a bit of pain. Also, dealing with large volumes of data using incremental materializations in DBT seems to be a thing that trips people up. Materializations in general, they're quite tricky to set up, and they impact things like costs of your underlying data platform. So today's talk will focus on simplifying the world around your DBT models to make them really shine by running them directly in Ascend. Now, before jumping into subsequent slides, I want to tell a bit of a funny story how I was looking for like an inspirational quote to talk about the target state. And I obviously went to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gave me this wonderful quote about the target state, what our data pipelines should look like. And it said, imagine a world where data flows as seamlessly as a river, where every twist and turn is not a challenge, but an opportunity for innovation. This is the future of data engineering, a future where better pipeline automation turns complexity into clarity, and where the true power of data is unlocked, not by manual effort, but by the elegance of automation. What a wonderful quote, right? And I asked it, who wrote it? Whose quote is that? Where did you plagiarize that, ChatGPT? And it just wouldn't give me the source. But it was DALL-E integrated in ChatGPT was able to generate this beautiful picture, magnificent picture of what the target state of data pipeline automation is going to look like, which is amazing. Okay. So here's the agenda for today. So first up, we're going to dive into some common headaches when you're trying to run your DBT models in production, things like juggling too many tools, difficulty to troubleshoot, and those climbing data processing costs. And next, we're going to look at how Ascend steps in and makes the whole process smoother, especially focusing on being cost-effective, boosting performance, and getting things done faster. So our first demo will walk you through just how easy it is to get DBT models up and running in Ascend. It's actually quite simple, as you see it, so demo will be quite short. Then our second demo will show you how to set tests up in Ascend. We'll highlight what Ascend can add to DBT tests when they're running in Ascend to ensure things like ongoing data quality. And finally, we're going to reveal how tweaking and updating the DBT models and then redeploying them into Ascend can save you loads of time and money, especially money in terms of not having to reprocess the data that has been processed, that doesn't need to be reprocessed. So let's talk a bit about our main characters, data engineers and analytics engineers, to position how Ascend and DBT can work together, right? So let's look at their day in life and the challenges that they're facing. Data engineers handle the heavy lifting of building and maintaining data pipelines, and they focus usually on the nitty-gritty of data collection, storage, and first round of processing, usually getting data to the raw stage. They're the ones who basically have to deal and untangle this complex web of what is called modern data stack with all its complexities and multiple tools. So hence all the icons are put on the page under that persona to illustrate the technical complexity data engineers have to deal with. Then we have our analytics engineers. They are the bridge makers between the technology and the business. They ensure the data is not just available, but actually makes sense for analysis. And they're the ones who understand the data and translate this data for their consumers, such as data analysis and BI experts. And they are the main users of DBT. They're the ones who know and understand DBT. They appreciate the process and the approach DBT brings for them in terms of having repeatable data models, having them testable, integrating them with source control and continuous integration. So analytics engineers lean heavily on tools like dbt to ensure quality, but any hiccups upstream in the data engineers side can affect their work and the impact the value that they deliver down the line to their users, which are many. Now, you can probably already see the problem we'll be aiming to solve here. It's the runtime complexity of deploying the dbt models into production. So simple flows and models work okay, but when things become complicated, the production setup starts to be very complex. And I put together the slide again with logos and images to illustrate the additional complexities that creeps into the development cycle with all the additional tools that need to be used to deploy and maintain dbt models in production. Now, here's where I will be aiming with today's demos, right? I want to get this picture across. For people working with dbt, I want to show how developing and testing models is going to stay the same, right? It's going to have exactly the same experience that you currently have. But imagine taking those models and plugging them into Ascend, where the platform automates the heavy lifting. It'll pick the best data partitioning and materialization for you. It'll orchestrate your models only as needed, and data reprocessing will basically happen only to data that really needs to be reprocessed due to changes in code or the input data. Think of it as giving your dbt models a supercharged boost when they go into production. So let's dive into this approach and see basically how it's going to make the life easier for our modern data heroes. Now, for data engineers, the automation of the routine stuff and simplifying how they manage data pipelines, it's going to free them up to focus on more important task of connecting data and enabling the value chain downstream without all the unnecessary noise that they currently have to deal with the modern data stack. So in Ascend, they're going to be creating connectors that bring data into Ascend. They'll be dealing with cloud data warehouses like Snowflake or BigQuery and doing less of the tedious coding. In our experience, in Ascend, data engineers usually have to deal about 90% less of it. So no more juggling complex orchestration tools or complex tools like Airflow. And it's going to be about working smarter, not harder, making their work more efficient and more impactful. Now, Ascend can improve the analytics engineer's workflow by integrating and simplifying dbt model deployment. It's going to eliminate the need for runtimes like dbt core or dbt cloud in production. It's going to streamline operations. And with native orchestration and smart data partitioning, Ascend makes data processing more efficient and cost-effective. It will turn dbt tests into real-time data quality checks automatically triggered by data changes. And this is very kind of important point. You wouldn't need to schedule them. They will just run whenever the data or the code is running, and only the tests that should be running, right? And we'll see that in one of the demos. So it can actually close a couple of really important gaps in data quality assurance. Additionally, Ascend enables a mesh-like data sharing that fosters enhanced collaboration across teams and projects. And by doing that, it is creating a more interconnected and effective data management ecosystem. Now, for the end consumers, so the end users of data, for the recipients of the work that data engineers and analytics engineers are doing, Ascend will significantly enhance their capabilities and basically provide seamless and mesh-like sharing of tested and certified data products across teams. So in addition to dbt model orchestration, it supports various tools like SQL, Spark, Python, and it can facilitate versatile data manipulation in analysis around the deployed dbt models. So through data sharing, the platform will empower users to self-serve in creating and consuming their own data products and training or using machine learning models. Additionally, Ascend enables efficient delivery of data to external data sources and visualization tools. It will streamline the process of data analysis and insight generation for those users. So you can see how Ascend with dbt models can unify and streamline collaboration in data management and analytics. It can automate data pipelines. It reduces the manual work for data engineers. Analytics engineers gain from easier data model testing and continuous data quality checks, so their output becomes more reliable and more predictable. BI developers, data scientists, and other data consumers enjoy quick access to reliable data and for faster insights and model development and testing. All those roles benefit from Ascend, seamless data sharing, It can foster cohesive teamwork and more efficient workflows in your data ecosystem. So this integrated approach boosts productivity and helps in better decision-making across different data-related roles. Let's now jump into our demos and see how Ascend and dbt can work together. Okay, so we will start a build session with seeing how easily the dbt models can be deployed within Ascend and how Ascend can enhance their efficiency and effectiveness. Our next step will observe how Ascend simplifies and streamlines the testing of dbt models, ensuring data integrity and quality. And finally, we will demonstrate how Ascend and dbt work together to close the loop after changing the model, deploying it back into Ascend, and how it can create a seamless and powerful workflow for you to move your models or to basically evolve your models in production. So let's get started with our first demo of how we deploy dbt models into Ascend. So working with dbt models can be challenging. First, you need a bunch of tools in production for things like data ingestion and orchestration to really make your models come to life. And this can complicate the workflow and increase the hassle in setup and maintenance. Now, the second challenge we're going to see addressing today is basically running dbt models often means you need to run command lines or containers in production. And while it is flexible, it's not always user-friendly, especially for those not keen on command line tasks or not really familiar with containers. Plus, it can make integrating with other data systems more complex, right? We saw in our first slide, people use Kubernetes with orchestrator systems, Kubernetes and other orchestration systems with dbt model, with Airflow and dbt models, which can be quite challenging for sort of data teams to manage and set up. So in this demo, we will see the starting point, scaffolded flow that presumably the data engineers will be able to prepare in Ascend. We will then deploy the dbt models as SQL transforms into Ascend, and we will see how the automated orchestration is going to kick in. So let's get started. So this is the starting point in Ascend. What you can see in Ascend is 3 read connectors that bring the data from an S3 bucket into Snowflake, right? So in Ascend is orchestrating it. What I'm going to do is, so all these 3 connectors, they're set to be up to date, which means the data has already been replicated into Snowflake waiting to start. This is the equivalent of your dbt sources, so to speak, right? We're going to look today at Jaffle Shop project, which most of you must be familiar with. And the Jaffle Shop project relies on 3 different seeds or sources. And here are the sources that we have here represented as the read connectors. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause one of them just to be able to see how the orchestration basically happens. I just want to illustrate the orchestration, but in reality, the orchestration can happen in real time. So I'm going to go back to my terminal window. So in my terminal window, you can see that my starting point is the stock standard Jaffle Shop, right? So in my stock standard Jaffle Shop, I've got my models, I've got my staging models, I've got my basically seeds that have been already created in my flow by data engineers, presumably. So I'm the analytics engineer that comes to deploy my dbt models into Ascend. So let's just do that. Without any further ado, let's just do a dbt compile. So this is where I'm going to create a manifest file. So I'm going to run the compile. That's going to compile the Jaffle Shop project against my Snowflake database. Now, if you're curious about the dependencies I had to install were dbt core, dbt Snowflake plugin, and Ascend IO dbt utils. So I'm using Ascend IO dbt utils as a translator of dbt models to be deployed into Ascend. Okay, now I'm going to run my merge command. So merge command will take the models from the manifest file and will translate them into Ascend's transform. Let me just run that and switch back to my Jaffle Shop window. And you'll now see how Ascend basically deploys the models and immediately orchestrates. Now, the orchestration that you will see happening is only partial because I've got one of the connectors intentionally paused. So not the entire DAG that represents the Jaffle Shop is going to get orchestrated, right? So you can immediately see that some of the transformations, some of the models get deployed into Ascend, gets basically moving into the up-to-date state. So this is where Ascend Orchestrator was able to say, hey, all my upstream dependencies are in up-to-date state. I can just go ahead and orchestrate those pretty much straight away. All the ones where I had my connector paused, they didn't get orchestrated. So this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to unpause the connector and see the rest of the flow getting orchestrated. All right, so I'll unpause the connector and my staging payments kicks into a higher gear and starts running. And once it finishes, once basically Snowflake finishes the materialization for that step, it's basically going to kick off the subsequent orders and customer steps for me. Okay. And when they finish, you can actually see that the dbt models, so we were able to infer the schema for our transform components, and we can already see the data basically created in Snowflake, and we can see the tables and materializations. So this is pretty much it. We basically compiled the models, and we just ran a single command that deployed the models into Ascend and basically orchestrated them pretty much straight away. No additional complexity. We were able to get there with just one command.
We do have a question here, Michael.
Yep.
So when the dbt models are deployed to Ascend, are they being translated into Ascend SQL transformations? Is dbt core or dbt cloud involved in that process?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So there is no additional runtimes. It's only Ascend running at this stage that is doing the orchestration and pushing down transformations into Snowflake. There's no dbt cloud or dbt core. We have translated. So if you look at the SQL statements, they're exactly the SQL statements produced by dbt compilation, deployed into Ascend as SQL transforms, in this case, Snowflake SQL transforms. So this is the SQL that dbt compile generates that gets deployed in the right order with all the right dependencies into Ascend. So there's no dbt core or dbt cloud at play here at all. It's a great question. So let me just move to slide. We just saw how Ascend can transform how dbt models are handled by automating the entire data pipeline, which means you don't need as many tools in your production environments as you probably currently have. It's like a one-stop shop. It can make things really simple and cost-effective. And with its plug-and-play integration for dbt models, along with added features like connectors and advanced orchestrations, Ascend can really streamline the workflow, right? And it leads to less platform complexity and more focus on doing more strategic tasks for data engineers and analytics engineers, and can really boost your team's productivity and reduce all the maintenance you have to go through in your production environments. Great. So let's move to our next demo, where we're going to run our dbt tests in production. Now, in our traditional setups, running dbt tests for data quality usually requires scheduling, and it actually creates a bit of a time lag between when data enters the model and when the quality check is running. So during this delay, untested data might influence business decisions. It poses a risk of negative outcomes due to inaccurate data. So between when the data enters the model, gets processed by the model, and when the scheduled dbt tests are running, there is a window of opportunity for the whole setup to produce inaccurate data. So this is what we're trying to eliminate here. So our aim here is to minimize this risk by implementing continuous data quality monitoring. And we want to reduce the chance of erroneous data to affect important business decisions here, right? So we're going to deploy the dbt tests into Ascend. We're going to see how they get orchestrated by Ascend. And we can basically see how from that point on, they can automatically catch any data quality issues. And we turn it essentially our tests into a tool that will be able to continuously validate data quality in Ascend. Okay, so let's go back to our demo. And since our compile, so JAPL defines about 20, actually exactly 20 data tests, different tests on dbt models that it has. So it's 5 models, 3 seeds, and about 20 tests. So we're going to now deploy the tests using another command line utility. So it's just going to be one command that's going to collect all the data, all the test data from the manifest file, and going to start deploying the tests into Ascend as Ascend workflow. Okay, so it's running and deploying my tests. And okay, let me just minimize that and shift it around. So you can see a whole bunch of additional transforms being deployed into Ascend that then will get collapsed into a group. So you'll see one additional box in the end that will say dbt tests. And this is where dbt tests are going to reside. This is where the SQL transforms representing dbt tests are going to stay. You can see, by the way, the tests are basically automatically running. As soon as they get deployed into Ascend, there's no need to orchestrate them. The tests are connected to the models that they're intended to be testing. And they're basically going to execute as soon as that model goes into the up-to-date state. So here we've deployed our dbt tests, right? And they ran. So we can already go ahead and check the results. So I'm going to clear my screen again. Let's do a check results. So when writing test results, it's really going to validate two things. So first of all, as DBT prescribes, all the SQL tests that return 0 rows will say it's a success, it's a OK test. And then we're also checking the status, the ongoing status of that data quality check. And it says passed. So it passed means it's actually green, it's good. When it goes into failed, the data quality checks can activate things like stopping the workflow, stopping your data flow. They can trigger outbound notifications to Slack or PagerDuty or send you an email or invoke a system, create a ticket to go and rectify that. So they really become like guardians of any bad data entering our data flow. You'll be able to take an action pretty much straight away. There's no need for additional scheduling. And if we go back to our Ascend data flow window, you can see that everyone is basically representing a test. So there's one test, there's 0 results. We also get visual confirmation from a test that it's actually performing the intended operation. Now, this is essentially the demo, right? So we run 2 commands, we deploy the tests, and we run check results that validated that my tests are passing, right? And we just saw how Ascend imports the DBT tests and turns them into an on-demand data quality checks in Ascend. And it can automatically trigger them when data changes or code in our pipeline changes, and it can ensure continuous and immediate checks for the data quality issues. So this efficient system eliminates the need for manual test orchestrations. It reduces the manual labor, and it reduces the risk of an oversight of data quality issues. It also enables quicker responses to data quality issues because it can fire an outbound notification. It can stop the flow with basically having options to pause pipelines when the problems are detected. All right. Moving on to our third demo segment, where we're going to see how we close the loop with GBT in production. So here, basically, we're trying to address the challenge of updating DBT models in traditional setups. It can be quite resource heavy, and it can involve substantial data reprocessing in terms of cost and time. And this complexity adds extra costs to deployment process. It potentially affects the efficiency of data teams and their capacity to deliver accurate and timely data, because reloading data when you do your DBT builds or DBT runs can actually take quite a bit of time, especially as your data set size is growing. The other aspect that we're going to see addressing today is data reprocessing costs. So when we reload all the data, obviously the underlying system starts to reprocess it, and unnecessary data reprocessing can have really dramatic impact on your overall data platform bill, right? So your underlying Snowflake credits or BigQuery credits, the costs can be significant due to unnecessary data reprocessing. So we're going to see addressing these inefficiencies today with Ascend, because it's actually crucial to maintain agile and effective data management processes that support our business's informed decision-making. So we're going to change the models in response to a change in business requirements. So we'll say, hey, business wants something else, as they usually do. We'll recompile and deploy the change, and we will see how Ascend basically is able to determine which parts of the data flow are going to kick into action and where the data is going to get reprocessed and where the data is going to stay the same. Now, before we jump into this demo, I wanted to quote a recent study done by a consultancy called Do It that highlighted the huge potential savings in the underlying data platform costs when the SQL generated by DBT can be intelligently orchestrated by Ascend. So these figures show native DBT models versus DBT transforms intelligently orchestrated by Ascend, running on top of Snowflake and BigQuery. So the top numbers are Snowflake, the bottom numbers refer to BigQuery. And they are actually quite incredible. So they almost, it's too good to be true, but it's been validated by an independent test, which is great. Okay, so let's jump into our demo, right? Let me go back to my Ascend data flow. We're going to have a look at our orders schema. You can see in the schema, we have columns that represent different payment types. Like we've got a credit card amount, we've got coupon amount, bank transfer amount, gift card amount. So these payment methods is something basically that our business is expecting for us to be able to handle when people come to buy our Jaffles. Now, the business has a great idea. They want to start selling Jaffles for Bitcoin, okay? So they're saying, hey, please be ready. We're going to start taking orders and people are going to pay us in Bitcoin. So you need to be able to handle Bitcoin payments, all right? So we're going to go in response to that. We're going to basically update one of our one of our models, right? So we're going to go to models orders. This is where we defined a payment methods variable that contains a list of all the payment methods that we should be able to handle. And this is where we're going to add Bitcoin, right? So we're going to say, hey, we're now taking Bitcoin as one, we're adding an element to this array. We're going to save it. We're obviously going to compile it. So now we have a new basically set of models that we need to deploy into Ascend. And traditionally in DBT setups, we need to redeploy the entire thing because we don't really know where this variable may get used or where certain macros that we change may get utilized in our models. So we need to reload the whole thing just to be sure that it is correct. And by doing that, we're actually reprocessing a lot of unnecessary data. So a lot of unnecessary data are going to stay the same, but we're going to reload it anyway because we're not really sure what the impact of a change that we're going to make. Okay, so we've compiled it. And let's just run one merge command. And I'm going to quickly switch to my Ascend window just to make sure we catch what bits of the flow are going to get reprocessed. So I'm going to quickly hit enter here. And we're going to go back to Jaffle Shop demo. And we're going to see which bits of our flow are going to get reprocessed, right? So in DBT world, everything gets reloaded. Let's see what happens in Ascend. Oh, here we go. We only have the orders actually now kicking in and moving into the running stage. Now, it's not just the orders, but you'll see all the tests that are linked to orders are going to kick into first waiting and then running. So you can see that the only things that were reloaded, oh, here we go, they're moving into the running step. So only things that reload and rerun are the things that are associated with the change in the downstream basically activities. So we can see how in response to the change that we've introduced, only the transform that got impacted by that change and the tests for that transform, only those moved into the running stage and again, in up to date. And let's see the results of the change that we've just implemented. I'm going to click on orders, go back to schema, and we can see a new column has been created called Bitcoin amount. So our data warehouse presumably is now ready to start taking Bitcoin payments for Jaffles. Now, how good is that? We're pretty much ready. So we've just implemented, we didn't have to reload a lot of data. So we didn't spend a lot of Snowflake or Databricks credits on reloading the entire model.
And Michael, we actually have a question.
Yep.
So in DBT, the materialization method for each DBT model has to be specified, but it looks like in Ascend, that doesn't seem to be the case. The question is, how does Ascend determine how best to reprocess the data or determine what needs to be reprocessed?
That's a great question, actually. So we actually don't follow the DBT approach here with materializations because we do something better. We do partitioning. So we define partitioning at the source, and we can also repartition. So this is how we determine which portions of the DAG or portion of the data flow need to be reprocessed and which partitions need to be reloaded. We will probably run another webinar on the whole partitioning versus materialization and how they all compare and how they work together. But Ascend, basically in Ascend, when we deploy DBT models into Ascend, we follow data partitioning rather than defining materialization for every step. And we are able to achieve more effective and efficient. So we achieve better results effectively at the end of the day. But we didn't need to worry about materializations anywhere in our flow. Right? So we're achieving equivalent or better outcomes with data partitioning starting from the sources. And you'll see basically it's a very simple use case here, but we can see partitions mentioned across the flows. This is how we deal with the size of the data set that we need to handle. DBT tries to do the same with materializations, view materializations, table materializations, incremental materializations. They're all trying to address the growing and unknown side of the data models, and we just think partitioning your data is a way better approach and more future-proof approach that you don't have to make a decision, when do I need to switch to incremental materializations in my workflow? Cool. So here's what the demo shows us in terms of benefits of using Ascend with DBT. So we were able to streamline the data work by focusing only on necessary updates, and we avoided a lot of redundant data processing. The platform supports iterative deployment and development, and it allows for continuous improvement and adaptation of data models while maintaining sort of the cost base, the reprocessing cost base, quite like minimal, right? Only the base necessary amount of reprocessing. And it has the following benefits. Analytics engineers can remain productive as they can focus on building and testing models in DBT without worrying about unnecessary data reprocessing and what effect it may have on the underlying platform costs. And the integration of DBT models into Ascend results in really efficient setup, and it avoids redundant data reprocessing as much as it is practically possible. Now that we've seen all the 3 demos, right? So we saw how we can deploy and run our models in Ascend, how Ascend orchestrates them. We're able to add our DBT tests and deploy them into Ascend as well, turning them into continuous data quality checks. And we're able to see how we implement a change in our DBT models in one of the variables, and we're able to see how Ascend was able to see and detect the change and only update the necessary bits of the flow without massive reloading and reprocessing of the entire data set. Now, to summarize the demos today, Ascend can streamline the data pipeline management by providing a unified platform for data ingestion, transformation, and orchestration, and it eliminates the need for a lot of different separate tools that can complicate your production setup. Its design automatically detects and propagates changes. It reduces data reprocessing costs. So Ascend can simplify operations by consolidating tools and vendors, and offers really straightforward licensing aligned with the underlying data platform licensing. It also aligns with analytics engineering best practices, allowing engineers to continue using familiar tools such as DBT for developing and testing data models. And it makes the entire process more efficient and more integrated when the time comes to deploy your DBT models into production.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. I have a question, Michael,
Mhm.
for me. So for the DBT utility that Ascend has, is that live, available now? Where can I get it? How does that all work?
Oh yeah, good question. It's available in PyPy. So this is the pip command I ran prior to today's demo to install all the necessary packages required for today's demo. So it's basically DBT Core, DBT Snowflake, Ascend.io DBT Utils is the package name. And it's basically a translation script for DBT models and manifest.json into Ascend, basically invoking or creating all the right data flow objects in Ascend. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's just one pip install. Yeah, and please reach out to us. If you want to give it a go, reach out to me, to Mike@ascend.io or to Tessa@ascend.io. Trent will help you set it up, just to make sure that your experience with setting it up is as smooth as possible, so you're not trying it on your own. Please reach out to us. If you're interested, we'll be more than happy to help you with your setup.
All right. Thank you again, Michael. This has been an amazing presentation. Absolutely love it. As somebody who's worked in DBT before, seeing how you can actually deploy it into production with a few command line prompts is amazing. It absolutely is. Really excited to see that. And yeah, definitely, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. We're really excited about this type of development for your analytics engineers. Yeah. So thanks again for joining, and we're really excited to hear from you.